Should you take a DWI field sobriety test? I'm Jeff Hampton with the Fulgham Law Firm. Thanks for joining us here today on our YouTube channel. Today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Today, we're going to discuss DWI field sobriety tests. If, for some reason, you ever get pulled over for a DWI, does it make sense for you to follow through with doing field sobriety tests? I can guarantee you that they're going to ask you, the police are going to ask you to comply with a field sobriety test. So we're going to examine the positives, the negatives, kind of the pros and cons, the do's and don'ts as it relates to DWI law and field sobriety tests. And if you'll wait around to the end of this video, I'll also give you a free resource, the ultimate guide to DWI defense in Texas. We'll send it straight over to you once we get to the end, all right? All right, let's jump right into this. So if you are pulled over, and let's say, hypothetically, let's create a situation. You're having a good night out with some friends. You're at a restaurant. You decide to have a few drinks. You get in your vehicle. Maybe it's, midnight or so. You're on your way home. And then all of a sudden, a police officer happens to see you not use your turn signal. And he's got nothing else better to do. And he's probably out looking for DWIs because it's midnight. So he decides to pull you over, right? He pulls you over and walks up and he says, "Hey, you've been drinking tonight." And you're honest. You don't feel like you have anything to hide. So you say, "Yes, I have. Actually, I just had a few drinks with my friends back there." Here's what's going to happen next. And it's going to happen 100% of the time. Whenever you admit to having had anything to drink, or if they smell the odor of an alcoholic beverage or anything like that coming from the vehicle or your breath, they are going to ask you to step out of the vehicle and to perform some field sobriety tests. Now, there's all types of different field sobriety tests that are out there. I'm not going to get into all of the non-standardized, the ones that are not as reliable. I'm going to get into the ones where the prosecutor up at the district attorney's office, this is their bread and butter. They like to rely upon 3 specific tests. Here in a minute, we're going to go over those 3. They are the horizontal gaze nystagmus, the HGN test, there is the walk and turn test, and then there is the one-leg stand test, okay? We'll get into that here in just a minute. Now, what is a field sobriety test? What's the purpose? Well, think about it. You can have something to drink. Contrary to public opinion, it is not illegal to drink and drive. It is not illegal for you to have a drink and drive. Think about that. If that were the case, we could not have any bars. We could have no restaurants that serve alcohol because it would be virtually impossible for you to get home unless you got a cab or an Uber or something like that every time. It's only illegal for you to drink and then drive while intoxicated, okay? So the key, though, is the officers understand they have to try to get you to a breath or blood test as soon as possible, and the best way they can try to do that is by establishing probable cause under the law by how you perform on field sobriety tests, okay? Now, let's break these down for a second. Let's look at the first test. It's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the HGN. Some people call it the pen test, okay? You've probably seen it, or whatever. You've probably seen something in the news, or you've seen people on the side of the road where the officer's doing this bit with a pen in front of their face. That's what that's called. That's the HGN test. Now, what is that? Well, this test is specifically looking for what's called the involuntary jerking of the eyes. Now, that's called nystagmus. Now, everyone has nystagmus naturally, but it's not usually visible to the eye unless you introduce some type of alcohol or some type of drug into your system that has a depressant effect on your body. Okay, that's the only reason you're going to be able to see it. Now, when we look at this, you can actually have nystagmus. The thing that people don't talk about is you can have natural occurring nystagmus. There are some people that have natural nystagmus, and it doesn't matter whether they've been drinking or not. And the police don't really know what they're looking for in that situation. So when that happens, that's an immediate defense to an HGN test being used against you. But also, there can be other things going on here. For instance, there's been much research that's established police car lights flashing in your face can actually affect how the police are able to see your eyes moving because they're being distracted by this flashing pulse in your face, right? So my point on that is that can be an issue. If you have inner ear fluid, if you have an inner ear infection, that can be a problem. If there's been a history of brain damage or a serious brain injury in the past, or eye damage. all of these, if you have medical conditions for this, can be a reason why it's not reliable. Now, here's another one. How about this one? How about the police didn't administer the test correctly? That's a pretty good reason why it's not reliable. The National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration is the organization that promulgated these tests, and they said very clearly, if you do not administer the test properly, they are unreliable to be used in a court of law. So I'm not going to get into this to too much detail, but if the officers are trained to hold that stylus or that pen 12 to 15 inches away from the face and to move 2 seconds out, 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out, 2 seconds in. If they hold it too close, too far away, if they move too fast, all of these can be contributory factors as to why that result may not be reliable. Because it's like anything else. If you don't administer the test right, it can affect the validity of the test, okay? Now, what about the walk and turn test? Well, the walk and turn test is the one that you've seen all these people, it's probably been in movies and you've seen it on TV, where you stand with your hands down by your side, you literally put one foot in front of the other, you have to count out loud. As you count, step by step, you touch heel to toe as you walk down this line 9 steps. And the crazy thing is the officer wants you to execute this perfect 3-point turn and then walk 9 steps back. Here's the problem. It's so easy to fail that test, and alcohol can have nothing to do with it. And I'm going to give you the best example of this. Before you even start your test, what the officer doesn't tell you is how he's grading the test. So if you're standing with one foot in front of the other, what if you step out of position for a second to adjust your pants or to adjust your shirt or something like that and then put your foot back? 1 strike against you. What if you start your walk before he tells you to start? 2 strikes against you. You've already failed. You only need 2 strikes. You say, wait a minute, I haven't even done anything yet. I haven't even walked all the way down the line. Doesn't matter, you've already failed. So my point is, he can look at like 8 or 9 factors, but the officer only needs 2 to fail you on it, and it may have nothing to do with your actual intoxication. Think about this. It might be because you're scared to death on the side of the road. You see people just driving by, looking at you, staring at you as you're about to do a field sobriety test. There can be many non-alcohol related reasons why you might not do well on that test, okay? So the reason why I'm telling you that is it can be a sign of intoxication, but it can also have nothing to do with intoxication. It's a physical test. Or what if you're coordinated about it like I am? I can promise you, if I stand up and do a field sobriety test, or a professional basketball player stands up and does that same walk and turn, he's going to do better if he's 4 times the legal limit than I'm going to do it because I'm not as coordinated as he is. So what's good for one person may not be good for another person, all right? So that's what we're looking at. Now, what about the one-leg stand test? That's the third one. The third test is the one-leg stand test. This is one where they'll have you stand with your feet together, your hands down by your side. You hold out your leg, just like it sounds. You count out loud, looking at your leg for 30 seconds. Now, of course, what are they looking for here? First of all, that's hard for a lot of people to do. If you're overweight, if the older you get, that's more difficult. If you have any medical conditions, what if you've had a recent knee surgery? What if you've had issues with your feet, plantar fasciitis, or anything else like that? All of that can affect the reliability of a one-leg stand test. But my point is they're doing that to see if you'll put your foot down. And as you do that, if you start too soon, if you don't count out loud, but yet you keep your leg out perfect the whole time, you failed. So it's very subjective is my point. It's very easy for an officer to find a reason to fail you, okay? It's not hard for them to be able to do that. So the point is, why do they do this? They want to take this information and allow it to come back and haunt you in the courtroom. That's what they're trained to do, okay? And then more importantly, they want to use that information to establish probable cause to force a blood draw so that you'll have to give a blood alcohol reading to them as far as their case goes. So it's important to understand what law enforcement can do after a field sobriety test. If it points towards probable cause, I can promise you they're going to try to get you to either consent to a breath test or they're going to go get a warrant for a blood draw to be taken from you. So remember, field sobriety tests evidence can be very tricky. So when they look at this, they know that that's a little subjective, which is why they want to hurry up and get you to a more of an objective test, like a blood test or a breath test. So the reason why I say that is, though, understand this. If those field sobriety tests were not done properly, if they are unreliable, if it turns out that none of them can be relied upon as far as your investigation goes, they never had probable cause to begin with. So lacking that probable cause may be a reason to get your blood test where it's no longer admissible in court because their warrant for that blood was not effective. It was not legal. So it's possible that you could win your case if the field sobriety tests were not done properly. So it's important for you to know that, all right? Now listen, people talk about no refusal weekends. Most of Texas has kind of adopted the North Texas approach to things, whereas used to be, they still advertise them, especially during holidays. But no refusal weekends are kind of like no refusal 7 days a week now, where they basically have officers ready to take their information to a 24-hour on-staff magistrate who is ready to write a warrant immediately for someone's blood to be taken. So if you are pulled over, here's the thing though. If you are pulled over, contrary to what other people will tell you, you still have a right to refuse field sobriety tests if you choose to do so. You do not have to give a field sobriety test. You can be very polite about it, but it's important. You can let an officer know, officer, I've had surgeries, I've had these other issues, I just don't feel comfortable doing them. I'm not going to be able to cooperate with that part of the investigation. Not because I don't want to. It's not because we're a jerk. It's just because that's not going to be fair as it relates to my performance on that test. Okay? Now, if maybe you or a loved one are going through a DWI right now. Maybe you have some questions you would like answered. Maybe you have some additional concerns related to the blood draw or another part of your DWI investigation. Don't hesitate to contact the Fulgham Law Firm at 817-877-3030. In fact, I encourage you, we'll have more videos that will be rolling out where we'll spend more time talking about other areas of DWI investigations. But if you enjoyed what you heard here today, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you would like that free ebook I promised you earlier, click the link right here below. Give us your email information. We'll send you over the ultimate guide to your DWI defense in Texas. All right. Thanks again for joining us here today on our YouTube channel. Look forward to sharing our next bit of content with you here in the near future. Take care.